In the worn limestone walls of Spirit Cave lies a story buried for more than 10,000 years. In 1940, long before DNA sequencing or digital archaeology, two archaeologists stumbled upon something that would eventually shake the foundations of American prehistory. Sidney and Georgia Wheeler, working under the Nevada State Parks Commission, had been surveying the area not for treasure but to protect it from guano mining. Yet what they found inside Spirit Cave wasn't just valuable, it was unprecedented. Nestled within layers of ancient matting, they uncovered the remains of a man. He was wrapped in tightly woven tule reeds, his head and shoulder remarkably preserved thanks to the cave's dry and sterile environment. This was not just a skeleton, this was a mummy. Unlike anything found in the region before, this partially mummified individual bore traces of a world lost to time. Rabbit skin blankets, lined moccasins, reed-based fabrics, items not only functional but expertly crafted. The moccasins were stitched with precision, the mats were layered for insulation, even the positioning of the body suggested ceremony, not haste. Who was this person? A healer? A leader? A mystery thousands of years in the making. But in 1940, carbon dating didn't exist. Based on artifact styles and cultural assumptions, the Wheelers and later researchers estimated the remains were 1,500 to 2,000 years old, a significant find, but nothing revolutionary. A report was filed, artifacts packed, and the body stored in a museum basement in Carson City, and there he stayed, forgotten, untouched, waiting. For nearly 5 decades, the Spirit Cave Man remained in the dark, both literally and historically. But the desert holds its secrets well, and sometimes the past just needs the right moment to rise again, until science came knocking, until a mummy rewrote the past. Sometimes the future has to catch up before the past can speak. For nearly 50 years, the Spirit Cave mummy lay silently in storage, boxed away at the Nevada State Museum in Carson City, his significance obscured by the limitations of 1940s science. But the 1990s brought a wave of new tools, new minds, and a renewed curiosity about what had once been overlooked. Among those tools was accelerated mass spectrometry, or AMS, an advanced form of radiocarbon dating capable of measuring the age of organic material with staggering precision, even from the tiniest of samples. Researchers at the museum decided to revisit several old specimens using this new technology, and among them was the mummy from Spirit Cave. A routine recheck turned into a revelation. The result? Not 2,000 years old, not 3,000. The remains dated back approximately 9,400 radiocarbon years, which, when calibrated using modern methods, placed his life at over 10,600 calendar years ago. That discovery instantly vaulted him into the record books as the oldest known natural mummy ever found in North America. Older than the pyramids, older than Utsi the Iceman, older than imagined. The implications were massive. This was not just a dusty body with woven blankets. This was evidence of sophisticated human life at a time when most archaeologists believed the continent had only recently been populated. It directly challenged the long-held Clovis first model, which dated the first Americans to around 12,000 years ago and assumed a single migratory event. What else had we misdated, misunderstood? For the scientific community, this was a moment of both shock and awakening. A find once considered minor had now become a time bomb in the timeline of North American history. It cracked open new theories, reignited old debates, and turned Spirit Cave into a point of global focus. The past had been patient, but now it was loud, and the question was no longer if there were older histories, but how many. The mummy wasn't just ancient, he was disruptive, and his story was only just beginning. What happens when science wants answers, but the past already belongs to someone? After the shocking discovery that the Spirit Cave mummy was over 10,600 years old, the scientific world leaned in. But so did the spiritual world, specifically the Falun Paiute Shoshone tribe, whose ancestral roots run deep into the soil surrounding Spirit Cave. This was not just an ancient body to them, it was family. Spirit Cave is located on federal land, managed by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM. And while scientists were eager to conduct DNA testing to trace the origins of this ancient individual, the tribe saw it differently. To them, any further testing, especially the extraction of genetic material, was a violation, desecration. Science saw data, the tribe saw a burial. The American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, was signed into law. Its goal, to return human remains and sacred items to tribes with demonstrated cultural ties. Armed with this legislation and centuries of oral tradition, the Falun Paiute Shoshone tribe filed for the repatriation of the spirit cave mummy. They insisted no DNA analysis, no further disruption, and no scientific curiosity could override their ancestral rights. Whose story was this to tell? What followed was a 2-decade-long standoff, a legal and emotional tug-of-war between two worlds. Scientists argued that testing could reveal priceless insights into early human migration. The tribe stood firm. Spiritual beliefs and cultural continuity came first. The standoff played out in courtrooms, laboratories, and headlines around the world. Facts clashed with faith. And yet in that conflict, something deeper emerged. This wasn't just a battle over bones, it was a reckoning over who gets to define history. The spirit cave mummy had become more than a relic. He was a bridge between past and present, science and tradition. Neither side wanted to give up, but both had something to gain, and it would take years of tension, patience, and trust to find a path forward, until one side opened a door, and history walked through. Sometimes, one test is all it takes to settle centuries of questions. After decades of legal battles, emotional testimony, and historical debate, the stalemate around the spirit cave mummy seemed unbreakable. But in 2015, a turning point came, not from a courtroom but from a conversation built on trust. After years of negotiation, the Falun Paiute Shoshone tribe agreed to allow one final step, a full genome sequencing. The task would fall to one of the world's leading experts in ancient DNA, Professor Eske Willerslev, and his team, working jointly from the University of Cambridge and the University of Copenhagen. They had pioneered the delicate extraction of DNA from ancient remains. Now they were tasked with answering a question that had lingered in silence for over 10,000 years. Who was the spirit cave man? Science had waited, now it would speak. The results were immediate and overwhelming. The spirit cave man was not a stranger to the modern people of Nevada. He was family. The sequencing revealed a direct genetic connection to modern Native Americans, specifically the Falun Paiute Shoshone tribe. The man buried in Tulamatting over 10,000 years ago was a direct ancestor. Oral tradition wasn't just belief, it was memory. The findings shattered the idea once held by some scientists that these remains belonged to a distinct, unrelated population. The DNA confirmed what indigenous people had been saying all along: they had always been here. And with that, centuries of erasure began to shift. The story of migration, settlement, and heritage in the Americas would have to be rewritten. The Clovis first theory cracked wide open. For archaeologists and anthropologists, the confirmation forced a reevaluation of human history across the continent. For the tribe, it was a restoration of truth, one backed not just by belief, but by science itself. In those strands of ancient DNA, something powerful was found, not just data, not just ancestry, recognition. And with recognition came a final chapter, one of return, one of homecoming. Some stories don't end, they return. After the DNA results confirmed that the spirit caveman was a direct ancestor of the Falun Paiute Shoshone tribe, there was no longer any scientific or legal ground to stand on. In 2016, after more than 75 years of silence, study, and struggle, the remains were officially repatriated to the tribe under the guidelines of NAGPRA. But this return wasn't just about compliance, it was about closure. 2 years later, in 2018, the tribe held a private reburial ceremony. No cameras, no public spectacle, just family, tradition, and the final act of respect for a man who had waited over 10,000 years to come home. He wasn't an artifact anymore, he was an ancestor. In that moment, Spirit Caveman became more than a historical figure. He became a symbol, a reminder that science and tradition, while often at odds, can eventually meet with grace. His journey had passed through labs, legal battles, and headlines, but it ended in sacred ground. This wasn't just repatriation, it was restoration. For scientists, his burial didn't close the book, it opened new chapters. Spirit Caveman redefined the timeline of human presence in North America. His preservation, his artifacts, his DNA, they told a story of sophistication, ceremony, and survival thousands of years before recorded history. He proved that cultures thrived long before our textbooks said they could. He turned speculation into certainty. But he also left behind questions that still echo in the dust of the Great Basin. How early did humans really arrive? Are there older ancestors waiting beneath stone and soil? And when we find them, will we know how to listen? The Spirit Caveman didn't just rewrite history, he reminded us of something deeper, that the past is not gone, it's alive in memory and blood and story, and sometimes in silence it waits to be found, and finally to be understood.